Good evening. Welcome to the 2026 election hustings for the St Brelade Deputies. I'm Cathy Keir and I'm taking us through the proceedings this evening. We have until 9 o'clock, so I hope you have plenty of questions ready for the candidates. Before we start, a bit of housekeeping. Can you please make sure your phones are on airplane mode so they don't interfere with the tech? We're not expecting a fire alarm, and I'm told that the exits are those two there, and you should go out to the front and stand near the flags. And if you need the loo, they're just outside, opposite and to the left. The event's being live streamed to the vote.je YouTube account, so for those of you joining online, welcome. You can access subtitles if you press the button at the bottom of your screen. And for anybody that you all know that can't make it tonight, they can watch online a bit later. So, you can vote for up to 3 of tonight's 4 candidates, and they are, in order from left to right, Gabriel Raimondo, Independent; John Young, Reform Jersey; Jonathan Renouf, Independent; and Monty Tadyer, Reform Jersey. The candidates have decided that they'll each make an opening speech lasting up to 3 minutes, although I will do a ding, and they've got a few seconds, 10, 15 seconds to finish up after that. And then they'll take questions one at a time, and they've allocated 2 minutes to answer each of your questions. And they'd like you to ask 1 question at a time. The candidates will then take it in turns to be the first to answer all your questions. So, let's kick off with the speeches. First, Gabriel Raimondo.
Well, hello guys, it's nice to see so many of you here, and hello to everybody at home. My name's Gabriel Raimondo, and I'm the young candidate, but I guess that's kind of the point. I think that's what we need in the State Assembly. We need to see some fresh faces. Where do we start? Well, many of you will be looking at me thinking, why the hell is an 18-year-old running? And I think that's a really good question. I think our government has failed us. I think our State Assembly has failed us. Jersey's heading in the wrong direction. Cost of living is a crisis that continues to get worse, and it's affecting every islander here. Young people continue to leave our island, and as that happens, it also affects every one of us, and hopefully I'll address that in a minute. Well, actually, I'll address that now. How does it affect any of you here? Because a lot of you will be thinking, well, that doesn't directly relate to me. What will it do for me? How will keeping young people here help us? Well, as young people leave, we lose the tax in the bottom part of our economy. And with an aging population like we have in Jersey, that will become a real issue. Services are going to be needed, and at the moment, we have to keep up the tax by taxing pensions, by continuing to press the people that are working the hardest in our society, and that is completely wrong. Let's go on to how we actually solve this, because a lot of candidates will give a lot of problems, and it's not hard to see the problems. You all know them. What are the solutions? Cost of living, where do we start? Well, short term, I think we really need to see an affordable supermarket in our island. This is something that's come up over and over again in this election, but it's because it's important. How do we do that? Because that's kind of the question there. We need to see the regulation cut around it, and we need to see planning fast-tracked. That is what has prevented them from coming so far. Looking long-term at the cost of living, short-term, that's what we need to do, but looking long-term, where do we go there? How are we going to bring it down? We need to bring job opportunities to our island. That will also keep our young people here. We need to grow our economy, and how do we do that? Well, we look out. We look towards the UK, we look towards the rest of the world. We need to bring in relocating companies into this island. Industries such as biotech, technology, labs, creative arts. These can be pillars of our community and pillars of our economy. Let's just look at St Brelades quickly, because I think that's really important, considering I'm running for deputy at St Brelades. Our rates have not been used correctly. They have been spent in ways that, look at the Elephant Park, for instance, 350,000. Look, is that worth 350,000? A toilet block? And I think this is where we need to address these issues. We need to look at what is being done and if it's being used in the best possible way. Why aren't we improving our roads? Why aren't we investing in our parks? These are things that will help our community. And really to close that off, everybody here has 13 votes in this next election. I would love for you to lend me just one of them to put a young voice in the Assembly. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. John Young.
Well, good evening, and thank you all for coming in such large numbers. I've had the honour of being elected twice as your deputy in this district number 1. and of serving as Scrutiny Chair and Environment Minister during COVID and Brexit. I'm a qualified accountant. I've lived in Jersey for 47 years, and I've had senior roles in the private and public sectors, 25 years in the civil service and 13 as chief officers. Now, I introduced strong protections to our southwest coasts and have represented many islanders in planning appeals and complaints board cases, both in St. Brelade and right across the island. The question I am most often asked is this: why do I want to return to the States? I can't simply stand by while Jersey faces serious challenges. Rising living costs, economic uncertainty, staff shortages, pressure on living standards. And we need elected members with experience and judgment to look beyond the fixes and make sound decisions for the island's long future. As the Clothier report recognised, ministerial government works best when policy choices and objectives are clear. That is why I'm endorsed by Reform Jersey, the Social Democratic Party. I know how to get things done in the States. I'm ready to work constructively with ministers and all other members, bringing that experience, judgment, and a strong understanding how our government works and how it doesn't work. Let me highlight my 4 key priorities. For younger and working age generations, we need more affordable homes, better jobs and training opportunities, more support for sectors such as hospitality, construction, energy, technology, media, and the creative industries. For older generations, we need to address pensioner poverty. We need to provide more downsized homes, support independent living, and tackle the horrendous costs of social care and GP costs. We must improve the management of government finances, using public resources more effectively, ensuring value for money, cutting out waste, whilst protecting frontline services. And my last priority is environment. It's our special identity and our greatest economic asset. We have a duty to protect it, and it does not mean standing still. Yes, we need to ensure our planning process is efficient, proportionate, and support sustainable development in the right places. The island plan does need updated where needed, but overriding planning policies for all commercial development would be a very big mistake. The safeguards which have protected our coasts, St. Brelade, and our countryside and our built-up areas from being overdeveloped must remain in place. Thank you for listening. I would be honoured to earn your support and your vote to serve as your deputy. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you. Jonathan Reniff.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, a few brief words to introduce myself. I grew up and went to school in St. Brelade. I went away and had a 30-year career in television, where I made science documentaries with the likes of David Attenborough, Brian Cox and Steve Backshall. I came back to Jersey with my family in 2019 and was elected as your deputy in 2022. Now I'm standing again as the only fully independent candidate in this election. We're going to talk policy details when we get to questions. So in this short introduction, I want to do 3 things. First, reflect on what you've been telling me during the campaign. Second, set out my vision for St. Brelade and the island. And third, explain what I think I can bring to the role of parish deputy if you re-elect me. I've spoken to many people as I've travelled around the parish, knocking on doors. And what I find overwhelmingly is people trying to do the best for themselves, their families, and their friends. We all crave community and the common threads that unite us. The problem is, it's getting harder to sustain our community and harder to achieve what we want. Many people are struggling and some are losing hope. That disappointment leads to anger, frustration, and division. But one of the jobs of politicians in these difficult times is to try and champion, in the famous phrase, the better angels of our nature, to bring back hope. That's why my vision is that in a time of great instability, St. Brelade and Jersey should be a safe harbour, a place of refuge in the midst of chaos, a place where we stay true to sound values based on cooperation, not division, evidence-led policy making, not populist spasms, and long-term planning, not short-term reaction. And to really deliver on that vision, Jersey must be a safe harbour for everyone, a community where no one is cast adrift and everyone has the freedom to flourish. So what do I offer? I bring experience as a minister who delivered results, as a determined scrutineer, and a parish deputy who has fought for this parish. But more than that, I bring a way of working, researching the issues, weighing the arguments, cooperating across political divides, finding the sensible path forward. I haven't always got it right, but I learn from my mistakes. This parish needs politicians who are serious, honest, and connected to the people they serve. I think that's what I can offer, and that's why I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you. Monty Tadyer.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening to you. Thank you for coming out on what's a good June evening. I know there are lots of other pressures on your time, and so I appreciate you being here. I think we're all here because we care deeply about our local community in St. Brelade, but also because we care about the island, even though we may have slightly different ideas. And I'm going to speak from the heart tonight, because if you want a polished speech, you can go on to vote.je and you can see my pre-rehearsed speech. Very good, by the way. Do take time to look at it. But the election campaign is really interesting because it seems to go on forever, apart from when you get to the last week, and then times just seems to speed up and you haven't got quite enough time to go round. And all sorts of funny thoughts pop into your head, both late at night and early in the morning. And for some reason, I had something called the Serenity Prayer in my head the other day, which just came into my mind very early. It goes like this. It's Lord, give me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And just in case you think you've entered into a seminar on songs of praise or an AA meeting by accident, there is a political message to be had there. And it's effectively, I think often government doesn't know what it's doing. It's got sometimes, and I think this is true of our current government, what I've noticed on the doorsteps is that nobody is saying that Jersey's broken. People are saying Jersey's a beautiful place to live. St. Brelade has a great community. It's got great facilities. But we just feel that government's lost its way a little bit. That government's not sure what it's there for, and that sometimes government is worrying about the small things. And that, to coin the phrase of maybe the Conservatives in the UK in the 1990s under John Major, is that Jersey needs to get back to basics in terms of its government. So, you know, the things that Jersey wants, people want Jersey to deliver, and I think the expectation isn't that high. It's that we want government to get on and build the hospital. You've spent enough money on it already. Get on and deliver it. We want to see things like Fort Regent being reinvigorated, not just words. And I think we look back to those governments maybe in the 50s, 60s and 70s in Jersey where they actually had a vision. And I think that's the key thing here, is that Jersey, despite some very good work from ministers who are very diligent, they've lost that vision about what Jersey needs to be 10, 30, 70 years into the future. If I think about the many people who are still living in Les Quennevais in particular, but all throughout the parish from my parents' generation, it really... the government did think about the economy. They, rightly or wrongly, they decided to set up a finance industry. It's now the backbone of our industry. They decided to give people states loans to help buy their own houses so they could be homeowners, not perpetually paying high rents. And they did take the bold decision to invest in Fort Regent and put that dome on in 1970, which many of our generation spent many a weekend up there enjoying ourselves. So the challenge for all of us, I think, is Jersey is not broken, but it can do much better. I want to be part of that change, and I appreciate your support.
Thanks to all of you. Well, you've heard what the candidates have to say. Now it's time for your questions. The rector, Sarah McClelland, has offered to bring the microphone round to you, and please ask one question at a time and then hand the mic back. Please tell us your name and confirm that you are a parishioner before you ask your question. And when phrasing your question, please make sure that it's applicable to all the candidates and it's not directed at just one person. If we have time, I will come back to people for their second question, but I will go to new people first. We won't be taking questions from other election candidates or from current states members. And please keep your questions succinct, and let's leave the speeches to the candidates. Okay, let's get started. Who's got, I think that person over there had her hand up first, the one in the third row. Then we'll go to this gentleman here, and then to the lady in red. Okay.
Hello, my name's Verity, and I live and can vote in St Brelade. My question is around the VOG, so Violence Against Women and Girls Task Force report, because this was a really pivotal document that came out within this government cycle. So my question is whether or not you think enough is being done to tackle VOG as the issue that it is currently, and what else needs to be done to continue the work that the current government has set out to tackle this issue.
Thank you. So is enough being done to tackle violence against women and girls, and what else could be done? First to answer this question is Gabriel.
Hi, Verity. I think that's a really good question, so thank you for it. It did come up when we were doing our radio interview, and I think it got me thinking about it more. Where do we start? Well, I do think we are doing something in schools, but I don't think we're doing enough, and I think we had a brief discussion about this a few weeks ago. I do believe, just coming out of the education system, we could do a lot more. At the moment, we're not doing it quite in the right way, and often it can be pushed in a way that is taken wrong, and that's not what we want. We need to work with people in our schooling system, especially younger people, because they're the people that are going to pull us forwards. On the other side of that, when we look at the charities here, they are severely underfunded. Our charities cannot do what they need to be doing because they don't have the funding. And they are calling out, they are trying to get the attention, but often this can be taken away. People aren't realizing it. I think that can kind of be an issue. And so I think between those two things, along with empowering people, and I do think we are doing this better now within schools. We've seen that development within 20 years. We are seeing better that we are empowering people to go out and when something does happen, to speak out, to report it. And I think the police system is getting better to look at more of a victim-based approach. And I think that's what we need to focus on going forward. Hopefully I've answered that. Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Oh, thank you. There is no question this is a serious, serious issue, and it's getting worse. Although I'm not sure, that's a good question. Are women and girls reporting incidents? I doubt it. You know, there is what we're seeing is a tip of the iceberg, I fear. And so what I think we are doing, I was reading the Home Affairs Minister report today, having a look to see the work that she is doing. She's obviously looking at the back end of the issue, which is whether or not our laws are good enough. And certainly I was convinced from what I read, there's been a lot of progress there, but there's more to do. We've got expert QCs identifying where the gaps are in our laws to put those right. But also the issues of the courts. How do women and girls get treated if they go to the court system? And I think, frankly, there is a huge agenda here. I think all of us, you know, even if we've had the slightest brush with our courts, realise that trying to make them more accessible, more usable in the community is really an important issue there. But again, I saw what our Home Affairs Minister was doing. I thought there was progress. But of course, there is, at the other end, it's a societal issue. Now, absolutely, tackling this at its roots, education, but of course you've got to go against the headwinds of all, you know, the nasty stuff that goes on social media and so on. And so we absolutely got to do something about that. And life must be so difficult for teachers and educationalists trying to turn this around, but they have to. This is why I put strong emphasis on our need as an island to whatever the UK comes up with, is to back the changes on the social media, to try and bring things into a more controlled environment. And then, of course, there's victim support. Do enough for victim support. That means, and that's about, I think, funding for charities who do this excellent work. And so I think that's the kind of broad agenda. It's a whole society issue. We have to look right across. Is there enough being done? No, but there's loads more to do.
Thank you, John. Jonathan.
Thanks, Verity, for the question. So this was something that we spent a lot of time on in the State Assembly over the last 4 years, and it has been encouraging that there is such a strong consensus for action. I think most of the votes to enact things that were put into that report were unanimous in the Assembly, and that's a good, solid foundation. But I think that one of the problems we have in Jersey is we're very good at doing the first step, acknowledging the problem, making some very good commitments. I think of the care inquiry, carbon neutral roadmap, and so on. We do these things, we say we're going to do something, we start, and then if we're not careful, we run out of steam. And I think that's the risk here. And the police force and the prison service have been very clear in saying that if we're going to pursue the things that have been changed as a result of the violence against women and girls, the legal changes, we need to spend more money on the police and more money on prisons, because we are going to have more offences. So that is a commitment that has to be picked up in the next Assembly, and it's one that I personally will be very committed to meeting those resource challenges. I think the other issue is around the support networks for people who are victims of violence against women and girls, and that particularly sits around charities like Frida, which have taken a really strong lead on this. And we need to develop long-term partnerships with them to enable them to feel they have the confidence and the resources over time, not just for 1 year, to be able to help the people who need helping. So, and finally, of course, the work in education has been mentioned. I think schools are doing a good job to try and tackle this at its root cause, and we need to make sure they have that support.
Thank you. Monty.
Yeah, Verity, thank you for the question. VORG, I think, is something that we've all learnt a lot more in recent years. So it's not a new phenomenon. It's something that we always need to be vigilant about, because it's not inevitable that society is just going to automatically and magically become more enlightened on this issue. It's something that we have to always be vigilant about. So it requires prevention, because Jonathan's right, the cost, if we simply rely on dealing with the consequences of violence against women and girls, that's something we have to do, but it's better to prevent it. And we prevent it through education, we prevent it through raising awareness. We've all got a responsibility to do that. Schools have got a responsibility. We know some schools have been better than others, but at that, and I think they're also learning. There's incredible pressures nowadays on young people from online influencers. You know, I even as adults, we spend too much time probably looking at our phones. I can't wait for the elections to finish so I can throw mine in the bin. I will respond to messages, but I've had enough of social media, I think. So I can only think what it must be like for somebody who's trying to avoid bullying and they can't get away from it, because we live in a hybrid situation. What I will add to Jonathan's point is that Frida have done great work. You know, removing the stigma was part of the reason that they changed their name from the Women's Refuge. So Frida is a lot more, it sounds a lot better. That's exactly what it's about. It's about breaking free from your abusers. But we've also got to be mindful of the fact that there will be, if you're in a minority community and you're also subject to abuse, it's that much more difficult. So we've got to make sure that people aren't forgotten in our community as well.
Thank you. Next question now. If we go to the gentleman there in the black shirt.
Good evening. My name is Simon Longwell and I'm a parishioner of St Brelad's. Guernsey and the Isle of Man are planning offshore wind farms to export energy. And these
There's a bit of a strange sound in the mic, isn't there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's gone a bit weird.
Is that better?
That's better, yeah, if you do it closer.
Guernsey and the Isle of Man are planning offshore wind farms to export power, and these Crown Dependency Islands expect to receive annual income of around 40 million and 60 million pounds respectively, without the need for any public capital investment. With private finance, we could do the same here in Jersey to generate similar economic benefit and provide new jobs. It's a two-part question. The second part is the climate.
So what was that question?
I'll get to that at the end,
okay.
if I made the link together. The Climate Council says that we're not on track to meet the legally binding commitments to the carbon neutral roadmap. But income from a wind farm would pay for the entire budget of the carbon neutral roadmap many times over, and pay for Jersey to decarbonise and get off oil and gas. Given the strong link between fossil fuel use and the cost of living, how do you propose to revise the roadmap, get us back on track, and reduce our dependence on expensive fuel imports? And given that Jersey needs to diversify its economy and increase public income. Would you agree that offshore energy would be an answer to these issues, and would you commit to continue pursuing this opportunity?
So, if I can just summarise that, how can we reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, and would the candidates support a wind farm in order to kind of pay for the carbon neutral roadmap and other things? Does that summarise it correctly? Okay, so first to answer this one will be John.
Thank you, Simon. Yes, a big question. I own up for my sins for being the author or promoter of the roadmap. Now, the idea of a roadmap was recognising that a transition to carbon neutrality is not something that can be achieved in the short term. We're talking about very, very long term, 40, 50 years or what have you. Something which people signed up to. There was a citizens' assembly that wanted us to go that direction, but the roadmap allows subsequent parliaments to decide on where they put the effort and where the resources are. And of course, we're at that point now. So where would my position be on that if I was elected? Firstly, on the question of a wind farm itself. I think it is energy which is available now. The technology is mature. And particularly as we're advised that the power that we get from the JEC, yes, at the moment we get a low cost. We're not experiencing the pressures of the UK, but that's going to run out. That's been notified, that contract ends. So having a source of supply, but again, which is independent of that, is important. Now, no way would I think about the public investing the whole thing. We're talking about a privately funded scheme. And it would only do if or not a viable proposal could be produce a decent payback for the island. And I think that, that we don't have now. That's one of the challenges. So I think now Guernsey, one's reading about the Guernsey Island Man, but my sources tell me I don't think they're further advanced. But as a concept and a principle, we should do it. In the long run, tidal power will be there. But all of the efforts and the experimentation is not there yet. The technology is not fully effective. It's not scalable. Whereas I think a wind farm is doable. But it's about money and the financial agreement, finding a partner that can give us a good deal, because we know the numbers. The numbers are quite correct. 10 times the amount of energy which we would get money for. And that's the whole point of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Thank you. Well, Simon, the two interrelated questions there. I obviously was the minister who brought forward proposals for a wind farm. And I still believe that we should investigate that opportunity. And I say that almost by, I think it's you can almost take net zero out of that. What is the one thing that Jersey has tried to do over the last 40, 50 years, economically speaking? And it is to try and diversify the economy. And it is hard to diversify the economy. It is hard to bring in new things. But the wind farm brings in an entire new economic sector in one big lump. And that is a good thing for us to be able to do. It offers opportunities for jobs for our young people, and it offers a new revenue source for the states. It offers resilience for us. So I think the wind farm is still a good opportunity, but there is a qualifying thing to that. It is a private sector investment. It will only happen if the private sector are interested in investing in it. There has to be a contract for somebody to buy the electricity. If there is nobody to buy the electricity, a wind farm will not be built because nobody is going to invest in it. So our commitment should be to provide the regulatory framework so that companies who are interested in bidding can do so securely and safely. And I think that is what we should do. That's the sort of government's involvement in this. But the investment itself is private sector investment. I know some people don't like the thought of wind farms, and all I can say is that you're going to have to see more wind turbines anyway, I'm afraid. The French have already told us that they want to build another wind farm right up to the 12-mile limit off St. Ones. So we might as well get some of the benefit, is my view on that. I think I've run out of time to talk about net zero. Perhaps we'll have somebody else to ask a question about that, and we can do that as well.
Thank you. Monty.
Thank you. So great question about the wind farm. Look, it's all going to come down to commercial viability. That's the bottom line. If the wind farm can stack up and if enough money can be made from it by the developers, then that's going to be one of the critical tests of whether we get a wind farm. So I'm open to that. I think it's potentially a very exciting project. The second point is, well, we need to get access to market as well. So that's an issue, I understand. That's the latest thinking. And it's not clear whether the electricity would go to France or to be landed in the UK. So there needs to be political discussions. Logically, geographically, the easiest place to get it would be France, but technically, because of regulation, etc., the UK is easier. So there are quite a number of hurdles to get over. And whilst I accept that it's very likely that this is going to need to be a private investment, it is important that there's a public benefit to it. What we can't have is just people come in to use our waters and local people don't see any benefit from it. We already get relatively clean energy from France. It's clean. It's nuclear, so it's not without being problematic, but some of that's hydro as well. And so the test for locals, I believe, is going to be, does this give us energy security? And secondly, will we see our bills come down? If the answer to either of those or both those questions are no, I think it's going to be very difficult to get any public support for it. So it does need to be delivered in the right way. The last point is also, think about the greenhouse situation in Jersey on land. We've got to make sure that we have very strict rules about the cleanup, because these wind farms don't last forever. And we've got to make sure that whoever builds them is responsible for taking them down and that we don't foot the bill for that at the end of it.
Thank you. Gabriel.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. And I think it's worth starting with the fact that more than likely, well, actually, the electricity from it will not come to Jersey. More than likely, it will go to the UK, especially with a UK investor. But I think we need to look at common sense here, and you're not going to like this question, this answer, I don't think, Simon. I don't think we need a wind farm off Jersey at the moment. I don't think that's the best use of government time. We have hundreds of people that are using food banks at the moment in our island. We have pressing issues in this island. We need to focus on that. I do think we do need to look at the environment. And net zero, there has been many things towards net zero. Net zero is going to cost us a lot of money, a lot of taxpayers' money. And we are doing quite well at the moment. I mean, our carbon emission for our electricity at the moment from France is relatively low. And but we could look at how we could improve things that to do with the environment. We could look at new builds and where we could put solar panels, where we could put air source heat pumps, where we could put better insulation. Better environmental measures, and they'll bring down the cost of electricity, cost of living there, specifically in the house. These are reducing costs while helping the environment. It's practical. It's not going to involve bringing in billions of pounds to build a wind farm. It's not going to waste government time. Let's fix the things that need to be fixed first, and then let's focus on projects that can bring this island money afterwards. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Good evening. My name's Sharon and I live at Le Perrant.
Can you put the mic a little bit closer because we can't quite hear you? Thank you.
My question to all of you is, if you were elected, who would you...
There are people saying they can't hear still, sorry. Yeah, I think maybe one of the mics isn't working properly. Yeah. That mic's gone a bit fuzzy, isn't it?
Right. My question to all of you is, if elected, who would you be supporting as our next Chief Minister?
Well, that's a nice simple one. If elected, who would you support as the island's next Chief Minister? Jonathan is first to answer this question.
That's a genuinely tricky question to answer, because we don't know how the vote is going to go. I mean, the truth is that for a chief minister to be a plausible candidate, they really need to be finishing in the top of the results, if you like. And obviously, we don't know who is going to get there. And we don't know also how much support they'll have. You know, there are some people who will naturally ally with people, and some people will find it hard, even if they finish at the top of the thing, up top of the poll, to find natural allies, perhaps. So a difficult one. But if you want me to pick a name, I would, as a dark horse, suggest that our very own Helen Miles would be a very good choice for Chief Minister.
Thank you. Monty.
Thank you, John. That was a very long answer to say the inevitable there, Jonathan. I think the good thing about party politics is that you know what you're going to get. It does what it says on the tin. It's like Ron Seal. Not everyone likes it, but it is a good product. And we've got a manifesto here for Reform Jersey. Okay, it's 31 pages. We've tried a longer one in the past. We realised that most people don't read it, so we went a bit shorter. But it is a programme for government. And what I'm more concerned about is I'm less concerned about the person of the Chief Minister, who he or she is, than what they're going to deliver and what their values are and what kind of team that they want to surround themselves with. So we need a Chief Minister who's going to be capable of bringing people with them, who's able to work with the team. And we will certainly go with the person, because we are hopefully going to get a number of Reform Jersey members across the island. Like Gabriel said at the beginning, you've got 13 votes. And my pitch to you tonight is that I would like to ask you to use only 3 of those votes for Reform Jersey. The reason being is that that's the maximum Reform members that you can vote for, 2 here in St Brelade and 1 for Senator, and give us a go. What's the worst that can happen in the island if you have used 3 of your votes out of 13 for Reform Jersey government? And if we deliver in 4 years' time, you can say to us, well done, you delivered on your manifesto, and if you didn't, you can kick us out, me included. I might need a break by that stage. But let's give you a straight answer to a straight question. We will, of course, be putting up our leader for election. But there are 49 members in the States Assembly, so we will be looking and talking to other States members about who is most closely aligned to our values. We will also be seeing whose vision we are most closely aligned to bring forward those plans for the future, not just for 5 years, but for the next 30 years. But I didn't say, and I don't think I mentioned his name either.
Thank you. Gabriel.
I think that's an interesting question. I think a lot of the candidates will be thinking about it now, even though they won't be saying anything. I won't try to make this too long. I won't be supporting anybody that's new, I don't think. There is one possibility, I think, that's coming up, and it could be Mark Boliat. He's the only new one that people are thinking about at the moment. Realistically, Helen Miles is probably somewhere in there, looking at people that are going to come near the top of the polls. Helen Miles, we could see Tom Binney doing quite well in a lot of the polls. I won't be supporting Sam Mezek, I'll make that very clear. So that's worth pointing out. So I do think it's going to determine who gets in, but I think it's also going to be very dependent on who then brings the best vision for the island, because that's important. I wouldn't support anybody that didn't bring a clear vision that I aligned with, or at least somewhat aligned with, because otherwise we're going to see the shambles we've seen in the last split government. So I haven't really answered the question, but hopefully I've managed to narrow it down somewhat. But thank you.
Thank you. John.
Yeah, a really tricky question. What we must avoid is having the situation we had 4 years ago, where we elected a government and it fell apart within 2 years because of internal division, because of squabbles, because there was no gelling of members and working across the Assembly. And what was the result of that? We lost the best chief executive we could have ever had. She left. And also, we lost the hospital project, and we binned £100 million, and we could have all been using that hospital by now. And who knows what the cost of that hospital, we have to have it, but what's happened to the cost, we must avoid that. So what I'm looking for, having been an independent previously in the situation that Jonathan and Gabrielle is in, is, if you commit yourself firmly now, you don't know who's going to get elected. You don't know what their view is about who they can work with, other members, because this is the key. For a chief minister to succeed, they have to be able to work with constructively across the Assembly. And that means, I suppose, in an old-fashioned word, consensus, building consensus. And that's a traditional Jersey way. And it means coalitions, if you want more of a party thing. And it's about working constructively together. In Europe, they do it all the time. They have governments with minority parties in power, and they do it by exactly in that way. So, obviously, as now I've joined a party, it's the first time for me, and I made a decision I want to be with a group that's got a clear political direction that offers choices to the electorate. And that is why we have a democracy. That you, ladies and gentlemen, will decide who's elected, and we will then have to work out how we can all work together. But obviously, I should be supporting Sam Mezek. But what we will be looking at. If he's not successful, we'll be looking, I should certainly be listening very carefully to what other candidates have to say and whether or not they fulfill the criteria that I've outlined, and possibly as well what Gabriel said. I think I go along with that, the vision idea. Thank you.
Thank you. So we need some more questions now. So we've got, who was the first over there? We'll go to that lady first, and then the man there, and then the lady over there. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Martha, and I live in the parish. My question is quite specific. It's about how do you all feel about the current and ongoing situation with the development of the nude dunes property at the edge of Lepullant?
Okay, thank you. Nude dunes. Monty first.
How do I feel about it? Well, the first thing is there's a live planning application going on, which will need to be determined on its merits. But I've looked at it, and it's not substantially different from the last ones. And I don't see any reason, and I'm quite firm on this, that there should be no change of use there. I think it's able to be used as a cafe restaurant, and that's what it should stay. And I don't think that the options have been exhausted for it, because it needs to go out to market properly. There are people I've spoken to, both on the doorstep, but also in the last couple of years, who say, look, I would take it on. I would run that business and I could make it work. They're not being given an opportunity to do so. But the biggest problem down there, and I'm mindful that we do have the owner in the audience, and I'm not unsympathetic to her situation, but the key thing is here, it's, I'll give you an example. I was knocking doors the other day in Lemoy, and there was a planning application that I took a photo of. There's a notice on the wall says that they've applied to put a pergola in their back garden. The pergola is not an imposing structure. It's 2.5 meters high. I looked it up earlier. And you can walk in and out of it. They need to submit about 10 different documents to get that in their own garden, which is a residential area. Now, when somebody puts a pod, a new structure, in a very sensitive public area in the coastal national park, people have been saying to me on the door, the owner's taking the mick, but they haven't used the word mick, by the way. They've said something out. And I think this is a problem because it undermines confidence in the planning sector. So when I hear candidates saying we need to deregulate and liberalise the planning system over here, actually what we need to do is start enforcing regulations where people are abusing them. And I will push for this to say that you cannot apply for a new application, submit a new application until you've complied with the current enforcement order. And I think that's what needs to be done. Government needs to be a lot stricter on this. I'm very clear on that.
Thank you. Gabriel.
Yes, thank you, Martha. I think that's a really good question. I made a video a few days ago on it because I thought it was a really pressing issue, and I do think it is an issue that's on a lot of parishioners' minds here. Where do we start? Well, I do agree with Monty on a lot of stuff, but one point I do disagree with him on. I don't think we should let it rot there. I do think we need to work with the owner, not to have it changed. It shouldn't be anything residential at all, but we have to work with the owner because we have to understand somebody owns it and they can just let it sit there. And that's not right. It's not going to help any of us. I was talking to Carl Sutton, who owned the Hideout earlier today, having a chat with him, and he would be willing to put the Hideout back. And I mean, a lot of people did go out there just to have a burger. It was cheap. It wasn't anything fancy. They just wanted to sit there and enjoy the sun or whatever they wanted to do. And I do think we could see that come back. That's not unrealistic. But then we also have to work with the owner, not to get it put into apartments, but to get it put into something that works for them, works for us as the public. And then, yeah, I don't think, like I said, I don't think letting it, sitting and protesting constantly every application is going to solve the issue. We're just going to end up with more applications in the same situation in 4 years' time. But no, I don't support the application or the last one or the last one before that. And I've made that clear because I have put up something against it.
Thank you. John.
This is a saga that a disaster, really. It should never have been sold. Years ago, The state sold it for £100,000. Planning committee gave it permission for a restaurant, which then failed. And the current owner acquired it as a result of things going belly up, as I understand it, having spoken to the lady. That's what I accept what she says. Everybody's losing. Now, how are we going to get out of this? I certainly can't support trying to making the thing into residential space because, that's, I think, the current application, because that's completely against the policies of it's a coastal national park. It's our principal recreational area. Once upon a time, not too long ago, the states bought every property that came up in the bay and made sure it was available for public amenities. Now, to me, that lies the solution. It has to be done by negotiation with the owner, and I think the prospect, if we can get a government that is in decent shape, and that I'm part of, working with the owner to try and get an agreement where it's acquired, not at an outrageous price, but at a price which is realistic, recognises what is its useful use. Toilets, possibly a small cafe or interpretation centre, because there is a need for such a facility. It's a vital need for beachgoers and for people who use the beach for other purposes. It's a really important location, and the idea of just spreading, if we do it there, if we allow this to be a residential unit there, we're going to see the whole of the bay. We're going to see all of our bays, and of course one thing I'm very clear is, when you come back on the boat around the southwest coast and you approach that corner, you see, apart from, sadly, one area, Portelet, where those buildings are still very prominent, pretty well unspoilt. And I think with this, we have to bear that in mind. There's a precedent. Eventually, I managed to persuade the Chief Minister, Grève de Lec. That's what they did in Grève de Lec. Same thing here, but by negotiation.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Yes, there are some very important principles at stake here, and I think one of the principles is that planning applications should not be used to string out and avoid enforcement. And that is, I think, what has been happening here. There is a current live planning application in. It is identical in all but minor changes to a previously refused planning application. And I think that is not acceptable. But what it does do, it has the effect of delaying any enforcement action because there's a live planning application. Monty and I actually wrote to the minister recently to find out about whether this could be stopped, whether you could stop vexatious planning applications that simply repeated previously refused ones. And unfortunately, there's nothing in the law to check at the moment to disallow that. I think we should change that as part of the New Island Plan discussions. So I think that's a very, very important principle that we need to resolve there. I am also opposed and have opposed and written objections to planning applications that would change that into tourist accommodation, but essentially turning it the first step towards residential accommodation on that side of the Le Poulant Road. We do need to find a solution. I've been down to meet with the owner's partner, but I think it has to start with respect for the planning rules that we have in place. That's the starting point for a serious discussion about what could happen there. I think we might eventually want to look at a state's purchase, but I think we're a long, long way from that. I think we need to work more constructively with the owner to try and find an application that actually fits within the planning framework that we currently have.
Thank you. Next question. That was down here, wasn't it?
Good evening, Peter LeBlanc. I live in St. Bernard's Bay. There's a problem in St. Bernard's Bay. It's Rue de la Bay. This is the road to the premier beach in the island. It's ignored by the Department for Resurfacing. There's 170 repairs in that road. There's 112 manhole covers, and nobody wants to resurface it. It hasn't been resurfaced for 70 years. The speeding in that road, it's a 20-mile-an-hour road, is horrendous. In the evenings, motorbikes go through there at 70 miles an hour. So do cars. Nobody wants to look at it. No, I have lobbied the deputies about this. They've been able to do nothing. And they can't even get the civil servants to respectfully reply to an email. The civil servants have no respect for the electorate.
Thank you. What's your question kind of related to all those things?
What would the candidates do to get something done about that road?
Okay, thank you. So what can you do about the resurfacing and the speeding on that road? We're going to start at this end now. First, Monty.
Thank you, Mr. Blanc. I do remember we spoke, I think, at one of my surgeries, and we've corresponded. So I have been trying to get the department to take some action. Indeed, early on in the term, we did a walkabout, the 4 deputies, as we were up Rue de Noirmont and then down Rue de la Baie. I think that was in about the second year of our term, if first or second. And the work has been done at Noirmont. It just hasn't been done at St. Brelard's Bay yet. So look, I'll tell you what I think, because I have been listening to people as I've been going around. There's a speeding issue generally in the parish, and I think it's absolutely correct that in St. Brelard's Bay, because of the sensitivity and the vulnerability of the users down there, we do need traffic calming measures. We need extra crossings down there. That's the first thing. And it is supposed to be being delivered by the department, but you know, there is a waiting list there. I'm hoping that we'll have some new ministers after June who might be able to prioritise St. Brelard's in the same way that the current ministers prioritise St. John. I'm not saying that he's done that deliberately, but that might be a good thing for St. Brelade. But look, I don't know a lot about the resurfacing. I know that there are waiting lists for resurfacing, and yeah.
Okay, well, let's let the
candidates
answer.
Obviously be done probably in sections, and because it's such a busy bay in the first place. So you're right, I think we need to look at practical ways to slow the traffic down. Hopefully this mobile speed camera will catch people out, because I think when the police are out, and it's quite rare, you can see them a mile off and people slow down anyway. So it's that age-old problem about how do we slow down the traffic. But I think listening to the residents and actually hopefully, you know, unlocking the delays at DFI is one way to do it, and I think we will certainly do more for that, all of us on this table, I suspect.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Yes, thank you very much. It is an issue, and in terms of the resurfacing, first of all, as Monty says, the infrastructure department have a priority list, and I think the very least we can ask for, and we should be able to get a straightforward answer, is a question of where the bay sits on the priority list. I mean, that is a simple piece of information that we should be able to extract from the department. It should not. That's not a state secret. So I think we should be able to find that out for you. And I accept the state of the road there is not great. I cycle. Yeah, it is quite dangerous in places. In terms of speeding, I'm very much aware of that issue. I live on the Corbière Loop. I have to put up with speeding as well. And the issue is that the speeding is often at night when A, the people out recording to see whether speed limits are being broken aren't there, and B, the enforcement isn't there either. And that is a problem. It is easier to solve where you are, I think, because it is a 20-mile-an-hour zone. It should be possible, therefore, to put in traffic calming measures. You can't put traffic calming measures in where there's a 40-mile-an-hour because it's considered dangerous. So a 20-mile-an-hour zone should be a solvable problem to create just enough of a passive solutions that slow traffic down and make it harder to make it harder for people to effectively to speed, make it a more difficult proposition. So again, if we're going to look at resurfacing the road, that would be the obvious time to look at doing those things. So I would hope that we could have a comprehensive solution to that. I can't sit here and promise you it will happen. What I can sit here and promise you is that I will try to make it happen.
Thank you. John.
Thank you. There's no question. That's been an outstanding problem for far too long. I think, yes, there is the issue of the resurfacing, but there's also the issue of the need to be able to manage that road a little bit better, because there's far too many conflicts between different types of use. Between, you know, you've mentioned speeding people with buses, there's people walking. and so on, whose attention is not maybe fully on the task, particularly they're there for recreation. So when you have that sort of problem, I think we need to look at a special plan for that road. It's been done elsewhere. You point to a number of roads around the island where it's been transformed. In St Lawrence, they've done it, Rudeho, and in St Albans as well. I think it was over about, in 2011 anyway, we managed to get £1 million out of the infrastructure department. Yes, it isn't perfect, but we slowed the traffic down. We created alternative services. We allowed things to be better managed. I think that's possible there. But also you've got the practical problem. It can only be done in the winter, obviously, because you can't do it in the summer. So yes, I'd hopefully, if we do things there, that we get the money out of the system. And unfortunately, just about everything, so many things come back to money. Now, how could you force the issue? I think my colleagues here have been pretty good at this. Bring a proposition to the states, force it. Get the states to back, put the money where your mouth is, do this scheme, and you'll be surprised how when the states back that, up it comes into the priorities. But of course, this is not just for local recreation, this is our prime tourist spot. We shouldn't be able to grovel around and scratch around for resources. In terms of manners about not replying to emails and all that, I've been a little bit sad. When I was a civil servant years ago, departments used to work helping people, used to communicate properly. You could speak to a real person, not some computer machine, and so on. So I'm really hoping that we can turn that culture back and we get a bit more friendliness into the way the States works.
Thank you. Gabriel.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. It's come up a lot at houses. I can tell you when that road is due to be resurfaced. It's 2028. And it's not particularly easy to find, but if it's the road I'm thinking of, it's 2028. We do have a lot of problems with our roads. It's partially down to the fact that it's split between the responsibility split between infrastructure and the parish. If you notice, a lot of the parish ones tend to be much better. A lot of the infrastructure ones don't because they take too long. I do address this very much in my manifesto. I do think we need more money to go into our roads, but I also think we need to address speeding, as the others have said. And there are modern measures that we are seeing across the world. In Australia, they're using a modern type of speed bump, which allows roads to be a higher speed limit and them still be used without that being dangerous. So I do think we can do it. We just have to push for it. If we don't push, we're not going to find it. And I guess this is where the parish deputies need to focus more on the parish rather than trying to support the entire island. We have issues here. Let's listen to the people that live here. Let's solve those issues first. We have senators back, leave it to the senators to start dealing with the more island-wide issues. That's their job. Our job is to look after our constituency and our constituents. I hope that kind of answers it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. I think there was one over here is next, isn't it? Can you put your hand up again just so that Sarah knows where to go? Thank you.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Penelope and I've been living in St Brelade for the last 2 years, and my peers and I have found that Jersey and its infrastructure is struggling to keep up with the increasing population. So why, if you believe, should we be encouraging young people to stay here when Jersey is overpopulated?
So you want to know why encourage people to stay here? Right, okay. So first to answer this one is Jonathan.
I wasn't quite sure I understood. Do you want to understand why we want young people to stay or how we encourage young people to stay?
Thank you. Why encourage people to stay when we're struggling with overpopulation, and how are you going to encourage them to stay?
Okay. Well, I do think we need to encourage young people to stay. And, we have a population of around 103,000 at the moment, 104,000, something like that. The issue we should be tackling is why are we not able to provide the resources we need for the people who are here? Now, there are infrastructure backlogs, but the infrastructure backlogs have to be solved, come what may. They have to be solved for the people who are here. We do need a proper sewage network, proper investment in our sewage network. We need to sort out Fort Regent. We need to sort out the wastewater system. We'll need to sort out waste disposal when the incinerator runs out of its lifespan. So these are all things I think we need to sort out anyway, regardless of the questions around young people. Now, I also think that we want young people to stay because they are invested in the island in a way that, say, people who come in for short-term contracts might not be. People who've grown up here or people who've moved here, people who have roots here, understand Jersey. They know what Jersey's about. And those people, the more of those people we can keep, the more of those people, the more we retain our distinctive culture, the things that make us different, the things that make us special. And so I very much would like to keep young people here, and I think there's a lot we can do on that in terms of things like housing. We need to address the high cost of housing. We have enough homes on this island for the people who are here. Unfortunately, about 10% of them are empty. We have to tackle empty homes. If we tackled empty homes, we wouldn't have so much housing shortage. There's thousands of them empty. There's 400 of them empty in St. Brelade. You know, so I think there is no reason why we cannot make this an island that works for everyone. We just have to identify the problems, some of which I've spoken about, and make sure that we deliver on those promises.
Thank you. John.
Well, our infrastructure, I mean, look, we're living still with Victorian sewers in town. We absolutely need to have a program to bring these up to speed. I mean, the standards are being raised all the time, and it's a small island. We are a wealthy island still, despite talk of it otherwise. We have to invest in our infrastructure to make sure that we can hold our head up high elsewhere, outside the island. Water, I still think we've got about a third of properties don't have actually water mains at the moment. And so we need programs there. And of course, the hospital infrastructure was built for what everybody thought was 25 years. It's gone way past its useful life now. Sorry, for 50 years, it hasn't lasted that long. We've not looked after it. It needs to be replaced. So now look, I agree with what Jonathan has said. The infrastructure is for everybody. Now, in the question of why do we need to keep young people here, why do we want to at least give them an offering that they can feel that they want to stay here? It's because, look, as a balanced society, we need to look after both. We need the young people for businesses. I meet so many people in the building industry now who just cannot get workers. They say they can't afford them as well, but they're just not there. Now, we need to have, but why aren't they there? Because the conditions aren't there for them, or the jobs or the apprenticeships are not there, the training facilities are not there. We need to invest in that. And also, yes, we need people coming in. Now, where we are at the present seems to be that our population seems to be more or less in balance. People coming in to do essential work for us seems to balance people leaving. Now, it hasn't always been that. We've had periods in Jersey's history where we were dedicated to try and control uncontrolled growth. That has now changed with Brexit. Brexit has changed all that. We can keep in balance. We can work with all this to make sure that they have the proper infrastructure that we need.
Thank you. Gabriel.
Thanks, Penelope. I like this question because it's so different, and it's so different to the ones we normally get given, which is always the opposite way around. How do we keep young people here? And I think it goes back to kind of what these guys have touched on. Is it down to overpopulation or poor infrastructure? Is it the fact that our infrastructure isn't keeping up with how our population is growing? And we see that we have more cars on the roads than we've ever had. We have more people out there trying to look for homes. If we can start to tackle those issues, then maybe it's not actually an overpopulation issue. But let me go back to people going in and out of the island, immigration and leaving, and people leaving. We need to bring people in at the moment because our GDP needs to become higher, and we need to do that so we can keep money here. At the moment, the problem with that is, especially when we bring immigration and what would be considered low-cost workers, when we bring them in, that lowers GDP per capita. And GDP per capita, whether you like GDP or not as a growth measurement, when you lower GDP per capita or per person, it lowers the quality of living for people. And that's what we're noticing at the moment. As we get more immigration in, we see the quality of living going down. And it's not an anti-immigration thing, it's that we have to bring in immigrants at the moment to take jobs because we don't have young people coming back. And so it's a balance. We have to always strike that balance. Now, I also think we need to focus on apprenticeships on island. Keeping people here is really key, and I think John kind of touched on it. At the moment, I think minimum wage has been pushed up too high. We need to see a split minimum wage, a minimum wage that allows people to earn the right amount if they have a family, kids, mortgage, whatever, and the people that live at home, like me, why are young people being paid the same amount as the person standing next to them? And I think that's the real key issue. But anyway, thank you very much for your question.
Thank you. Monty.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for on that one, Gabriel. There might be an apprenticeship wage in the States Assembly if you're not careful. I'm sure 30,000 would do. Look, no, more seriously, look, Penelope, it's a great question, and I will answer it in a roundabout way because I'm a politician, and the first thing is, right, something Gabriel said earlier is that we're not just all here to do parish work. We're not just all here, as important as it is to worry about yellow lines and speeding. We will do that because we're part of the community and it's casework. There are going to be 49 members in the Assembly and 40 of them are not going to be senators, okay? So we do need to all be capable up here of dealing with ministerial portfolios, of chairing scrutiny panels, and of doing committee work and working constructively with other members. And the point I would make is that I've chaired the Economic and Scrutiny, International Affairs Scrutiny Panel over the last 2 years, and I've worked on scrutiny for many years before that. And there is something called the Future Economy Programme, and the reason we want to keep young people here is, I'll give you two reasons. There's a philosophical answer and a practical answer. The philosophical answer is because we want to make the island the kind of place where young people want to stay. So it's not about that our objective should just be to keep young people here at all costs and to force them to come back, but it should actually be that we want to make the island the kind of place where everybody wants to live and work. And there's also this issue with something that I call the Fort Regent conundrum. So we know that Fort Regent was built to keep people out, and that nowadays we're having this problem of getting people up there. Now, similarly, our population and housing policy was designed in an era where we were trying to keep people out. We've now got a problem that we want to get people in because there are not enough people to do the jobs. We've got an aging population, and it's a great asset, the aging population, to our community. There's so much wisdom that's contained in that. But when I hear comments that immigration coming in, we automatically see the quality of life going down, ask somebody in a care home whether they think their quality of life has gone down because they've got someone from the Philippines looking after them and bathing them and doing their nursing care. Their quality of life is very much linked, and our success as an island is linked to sustainable immigration. But it does involve young people staying here to do the jobs too.
Thank you. So who else would like to ask a question? Should we go front, second, fourth, and then over there? So we've got the next 4 questions sorted.
Very shortly, those of us walking, cycling, or driving along our route to Francfort towards Pont-de-Var will look right and see, just across the fields, a 6-story hotel, which is to be built in the green zone. The hotel was granted outline planning permission, as the candidates will know, in March, despite its initial application contravening 24 policies of the island plan. If elected and faced with the framing of a new island plan, will the candidates resist a wholesale revision of that plan, an idea being touted by some who are standing for election, and which is indeed a central part of the manifesto of Value Jersey, the party that's not a party, and instead support the protection of the green zone, a zone which I think, and I hope many other people in the audience tonight will think, is especially important to the look and feel of St. Brelade.
Thank you. John's first to answer this one.
Thank you, Alistair. I think it won't surprise anybody here that if I had anything to do with it, we certainly would not. And if I get elected, I would certainly be arguing that we need to stand firm on the principles of the planning policies that have not just been invented by the last government or the one before, go right back to after the war, when wise heads said they need to be able to plan for the future of this island. In the 1960s, the green zones and others took their route, and successive generations of politicians over the years, with the support of everybody, wholesale public support, brought those policies in to protect our green spaces, and also added to that the coastal protections. And I feel proud that during the time I was added to it, the island plan includes a policy that protects 35% of our coasts. And I looked at the plan today, all of the coasts around the parish of St Brelade, apart from the built area of St Albans, are protected. And I'm proud of that, because that's important now. So would I resist any attempt to change the island plan to remove things like that? But we have to make judgments. We need some development. We need sustainable development. We need it in the right place. Now, I think Alistair has spoken about one particular project. I know a little bit about that, because in the island plan, I did go along with the idea we need to have some public use in that area, because we've got the rugby club, we've got the football club, and of course we know that the netball club wanted a space of their own at that time, and we already had Stride, which was there in place. I thought there would be a space for some kind of commercial activity somewhere along there, but the idea that you would have a very large dominating structure in the size it is, I think, frankly, personally, if I'd have had any, I wouldn't have gone along with that. But that's just one issue. The main issue, the review of the island plan, keep the policies.
Thank you. Gabriel.
I think it's a very good question. And I think it's slightly ironic that John's gone down that route, considering when he was last in, he was very much for St Brelade's being the second town, which I'm very much against. I don't think we need the development here that would make us the second town. Our green zone does need to be protected, and it's a key part of what I stand for, is protecting our green zone, but then also realizing that we do need development in certain areas. And I think we need to work with people that are putting in planning applications, not down new dunes, but not that sort of application. We don't need that, but we need applications, and we need to look at them with people, and we need to see how that can work to make our island better. For instance, we do need hotels, and I think Strive going through was incredibly important. I know it's not in this parish, but I think that was incredibly important. I don't think Value Jersey is advocating for taking away the green zone, but what I do think it's advocating for doing is exactly what I've said there. How we can work with people to produce the development we need to see in Jersey, to support our community, to give our community what's necessary, whether that be economically or socially, for people to go and do things. I hope that somewhat answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Monty.
Yeah, thank you for the good question, Alistair. Look, I know that you've campaigned for a long time, and when you were deputy of this parish as well, you've got strong environmental and coastal protection credentials there. I'm the same. I've actually protected small patches of land in Clos de Sable, for example, and so I think we've got to be mindful of the whole parish. Getting back to the question, I don't want to see the countryside developed. I think this is one of the unique things, and it's throughout successive island plans, Jersey has treaded that fine line between overdevelopment and maintaining the countryside. I thought the comment about St Brelade being the second town was a bit unfair. I think that was a misunderstanding in the island plan. I think the way I read it, it was that there's already St Brelade, Les Quennevais Red Houses is effectively de facto the second town, but we don't have the same amenities. We had never given the same priority that St Helier is. So within that, it's not just about cramming more into St Brelade, and that must never happen, but it is about making sure that we've got balanced development, that we've got extra amenities, renewed amenities, like the Les Quennevais Sports Centre, which does need to be updated. One word of warning, I think, there is going to be an assault in the next assembly on what I think are greenfield sites. They call them brownfield sites, but these are the old glasshouse sites. These are still agricultural zones, and some very wily owners, I think, are holding on to them to try and wear the government down, to try and get planning permission by saying things, we'll only build a couple of houses on these. No, I think the law says that you have to either restore the glass houses or take them down and return them to agriculture. And we've got some voices in the States that are trying to pull the other way. And I think that is going to be the battle zone, actually. Not the green fields that are literally green with cows in them, but the brownfield sites, which are still part of the green backdrop zone. That's where the battle is going to take place.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Yes, thank you, Alistair, very much for the question. I came into politics partly because I wanted to make sure that we protected the environment. I came back to live in Jersey because I felt really thankful to the people who had, over the last couple of generations since I left to go to university, had fought so hard to protect the countryside and the coast that we so much enjoy. And I've actually taken the trouble to thank most of them personally, some of those most key figures like Mike Stenterford and so on. That is critical, and I do worry, like Monty, that the next assembly will see, under the guise of reducing red tape, of encouraging business and so on, an attempt to weaken planning protections that I think are vital. And I think the supermarket idea is a prime example of that. The supermarket is being touted as, if only we could speed this through planning, it would all come here. I don't believe it's true, by the way, but I think there is a contradiction there. I do stand for protection of the countryside and the coast. I don't think that every single policy in the island plan is set in aspic. I think we do need to look sensibly at things that could be improved. There are too many minor things in there, I think, too much attempt to control things that are too small to be in an island plan. I absolutely think we can do better with that. But you do not, in the end, create sustainable economic development by destroying the things that's made Jersey special. And that, I think, has got to be a fundamental principle. It's our greatest inheritance and, therefore, I think, the foundation of our future wealth.
Thank you. Next question.
Good evening. My name's Johnny Hay, and I live at Pettypaw. Firstly, can I say it's with disappointment that I see that there are 4 male candidates here today, whereas our female representation last time was 50%. Okay, sorry. Yeah, female rector, yeah. There's been growing debate about gender equality, men's issues, and the changing roles of men and women in society. What do you believe are the biggest challenges facing men and women today, and what role, if any, should government play in addressing them?
Okay, thank you for that question. First to answer this one is Gabriel.
I actually very much agree with you. I do think it is sad that we have 4 male candidates, and I do think quickly that is partially down to the abuse of running as a candidate is not particularly easy. But I do think hopefully we will encourage more people in the next one. But it is good to see that Deputy Miles is going for a senatorial position, so it's not like we've lost both of the female deputies here. I think the biggest thing that is going to hit us with at the moment is positive discrimination, and I have to explain that. I think it's a real problem at the moment, and we are starting to see it more and more and more. In light of trying to bring equality, and I don't think this is just gender-based, I think this is based more generally. In trying to bring equality, we can often see people anti-discriminated. And let me give an example of that. When it comes to applying to university, we've often noticed that a lot of universities are trying to fill quotas, and so therefore they don't pick people based on ability or grades. They will pick them based on where they've come from. In fact, you're more likely to get in if you live in Jersey rather than the UK, or race or gender, and I believe that's wrong because that goes against the fundamental basics of equality. And personally, I believe in complete equality where people are born equal, and I think that goes against that. And I think we need to tread that line very carefully as to not bring in more discrimination to try and solve the problem we're trying to fix in the first place. And I think that'll be a real issue. I hope that somewhat answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Monty.
Thank you. I do feel like I need to apologise for being male. I did try and see if they could fit me in for a procedure before tonight, but the list was too long. I'm afraid you've got to take us as we are. But look, more seriously, there is a way and there is an issue here because women are put off from politics. Not all women. We've got some very good candidates running for senator, but there's not many of them. I suspect, actually, the 4 of them who are running, is it just 4? I think we've got a very good chance of getting in, all of them. So once women do run for election, the public do want to vote for them. But there is a solution. It's called party politics. I mean, look at Reform Jersey. We're a shining example of parity. We have 10 members in the Assembly. 5 of them are women, 5 of them are men. This time round, we've got as near to parity as we can. Out of our 16 candidates, we have 7 women and 9 males. But the point is we don't select on the basis of gender, we select on the basis of can they do the job. There's a vetting process, there's an application process that all of us go through because we want to make sure that somebody's not just able to be a candidate, but they can actually serve the public of the island when they get there. And we talk to our female candidates and they say to us, look, we feel better running as part of a team because we don't have the expertise in everything. This question actually came up the other day at the youth hustings, and it was a good question then as well. Someone told me that, women don't do a job, they don't apply for a job because they say, I can only do 90% of the job description, so I'm not going to apply for it, whereas men will look at it and say, I could do 90% of that, I'm going to apply. I think actually they look at it and say, I could do 10% of that, where do I sign up? So, and I think there's also the cult of the personality, which is the corollary, the opposite, if you like, of personality politics. We have this system which values the cult of the personality, the independent, and it's all about saying, look at me, I've got a great suit, don't I speak so well? Actually, I want to know what your values are, and I think women do bring a quality to debate and to the Assembly, which is often more considered. It's less egocentric, and it's about delivering solutions, not necessarily caring about who gets the credit for those decisions. So we do need a mixed Assembly, and it's not just, of course, about gender, it's about true diversity of thought and of demographics.
Thank you. Jonathan.
I don't know if anybody wants to sign up to the cult of personality for me. I don't quite see it that way. I want to return to the question, which, unless I'm mistaken, was about the biggest challenges in Jersey. And I have not actually seen any examples of positive discrimination in Jersey where these things have actually happened. So I think Jersey, we don't need to import these sort of culture war kind of issues into Jersey. We are actually a very balanced society in that regard, and I haven't seen those things happening. So what do I think are the biggest issues? Well, we've talked about at least some of them already in terms of discrimination against women, in terms of the VOG, the Violence Against Women and Girls Task Force, and the things we need to do to tackle that. And I think, I think your question was broader than that. I mean, there are men's health issues which needs addressing. There's those kind of biases in the system as well that have not yet been addressed. But I think this is this to me fits in the box of the kind of issues that are solvable because we are a small island. We can actually identify the issues in this island and deal with them. And that is partly about listening to those groups who come to see us and talk to us about their problems. That is how we discover it and then can act on it. So I think the issues are well known. They're not the same issues as in the UK, and I think we should be tackling them in conjunction with those community organisations, charities, and so on that are able to speak for groups.
Thank you. John.
Thank you. On this specific, I too was disappointed that we only had 4 male candidates. I expected there would be one other, but it didn't happen. I don't think it's disconnected from the fact that we chose as an island. I wasn't party to this vote to bring back senators. I still question that. It means that there was less opportunity for new entrants to get into politics as deputies, which I think is the proper route. But nonetheless, that decision's been made, and we will see how we end up. I hope we end up with a reasonable balance over taking the states as a whole. We'll find out. But obviously, what are the big challenges? we've still got quite big issues of pay discrepancies. The imbalance between pay and remuneration across the sexes. And so women are still generally, I don't think, paid up to the mark in terms of their male counterparts in senior roles. But there's also a bit of a which I can't work out, and I'm going to take this away and try and think about it. Why is it that we've got a situation in many families, women now are often the primary breadwinner in earning the majority earnings, and yet in the society as a whole, we're up against their colleagues in equivalent roles, they're paid less. And so I haven't got an answer to that. So I think that's one issue. And of course, women now, I think I tend to agree with Jonathan. We've got women in senior roles in all the law firms, in the financial services businesses, international businesses, in major international players, in governments elsewhere throughout the planet. We've got prime ministers or lead ministers and so on. And we've got to be trying to aiming that. But, I think what we've got to do is, should we introduce positive discrimination? No, I think we've got to make those change as a society. We've got to adjust. We can't just carry on in a kind of old-fashioned way. And so, move towards greater equality, definitely.
Thank you. Next question. It was that person on this row first, I think.
Hi, my name is Peter Longo. I live in Red Houses. My question is about food security. So obviously that's been highlighted as a big issue for Jersey going forwards. As Monty said, we've got loads of greenhouses sat derelict. It's been highlighted that we need to diversify our food supply, so whether that's going to France, new suppliers, or domestic production. I'd like to see more domestic production in Jersey. And my question is, how can we show young people, like the ones that go to the school, that agriculture can be a high-tech and modern career? And how can we encourage young business people and graduates coming back to the island? How can we encourage them to start new agricultural businesses?
Thank you. So how do we encourage new agricultural businesses, both from people here and from young people? Right, we're going to start at this end now. Gabriel.
Thanks, Pete. I know we've had a brief chat about this before, and I think it's a really good question, and it's got me thinking a lot more about it. Coming from school, most of what we give in there, in fact, almost all of it, is not local. And I think that's a problem. We don't start right from the education level. And if you educate people to be away from local produce, there's no incentive for them to be towards it. We also see, I think our education system at the moment is not fit for purpose. And I think one of the reasons that younger people aren't moving into agriculture in that industry is because there's no push for it. We don't offer the apprenticeships or the options in that industry. And that would be a really good thing to focus on is, can we look at the schooling system? People that might not want to go all the way, might not want to go and do 11 GCSEs or go and do A-levels, can we see them going and doing something more along that sort of route? I think the other thing is the cost is a massive barrier to entry, and a lot of young people, a lot of people in general, just simply can't afford to go out and start any sort of agricultural business. People have those greenhouses. Are they going to let them go? Probably not. And I guess we see that because eventually they think the government might give in. And to be honest, I think that'd be a terrible idea. But what can we do with the greenhouses? And I think we need to look at that. I don't really have the answer for that at the moment, if I'm honest. But I am willing to look more into it because I do think having food security that is local would be really good, especially with our ferry situation at the moment. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you. John.
Thank you. Excellent question. There's no question. We need to diversify. Agriculture is strongly on my list. A whole suite of things. For example, the island plan. Having said we do need to change it, and in the case to enable small holdings, we've been far too inflexible on allowing people who have got an aspiration to set up in small, local, small holding businesses to be able to produce local produce. They've had to go through hoops to do that, and those policies need to change. We've got a policy in there for allotments. I put in a policy there but what has happened? Nothing. Nobody's, because the parishes are not seeming to come forward. We're not seeing people come forward because allotments kind of is almost like a grassroots thing. Allotments next to urban areas where people can start a growing practice, and that leads you on to bigger things with allotments and so on. And of course, all of agriculture at the moment, well, what we've now gone to is basically cash cropping by one major producer, which is owned off the island, which is selling, main crop is selling Jersey Royals as a cash crop. And what we need, I think we need to shift some of that and try and get more local growing in there. Now, once upon a time, we had the Howard Davis Farm. The Howard Davis Farm was formed for training in horticulture. There was a centre up there of Highlands. Well, what is happening to all that? What happened to all the glass houses and the growing and the learning that was going on? That's all stopped. So, frankly, we've got to start to relearn some of this, of how previous generations recognised that Jersey is an island we need to produce more food ourselves. And I think inevitably it will need money injected into the system, because I know that growers have tried this and given up because they find they can't compete against stuff coming in from outside the island. So I think, obviously there are other issues to do with enabling the dairy herds to keep going, but basically it's a really important subject. We must make that change.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Yeah, it's a brilliant question. And I think the starting point for me is the need to increase our resilience. We're never going to be self-sufficient in food, but we can be more resilient by producing more food, more variety of food. And the second starting point, I think, is to acknowledge that the potato industry is shrinking. It's shrinking quite deliberately so that it produces less but can charge more for it. We have something like 25% of all our agricultural land is currently not being farmed. So we have an opportunity. As John Young has said, we put too many barriers in the way of people who want to farm. We have rules around what constitutes a bona fide agriculturalist and so on that just mean that it isn't easy. Somebody with a smart idea, somebody with a niche isn't going to be big scale initially, but they find it hard to get going. We need to address that. Now, I know some work has gone on to do that, and we have now got a rural support program which does offer some grants and does offer help to people. So I think the answer is we need to build on what we're doing. We've got things like Scoop. We've got things where people are doing that small scale production and producing it and selling it directly and developing those little niches. But the other thing I'd point out is there is also a high-tech element to it, and there is also biotech farming and things related to that. We've got medicinal cannabis, but there are potentially other ones as well. So we should also have our eye on those big economic opportunities that might come along. Glasshouse sites might be good for that sort of thing, and we should be looking to see how we can support those new entrants into the economy, because that is another example of where we could diversify the economy with high-value products as well. So two things, that small scale and the high-tech.
Thank you. Monty.
Thank you. I think we're not supposed to mention other candidates, but Jonathan did give a good answer there. I was lucky enough to go up to the Jersey Farmers Union event last week, and you learn so much when you go to those things. There were the big producers, the potato farmers were there, but also the smaller producers. I learnt about Jersey eggs, that apparently all of the eggs that are produced from Jersey hens only make up for 30% of the eggs that are sold in the island, and even if they wanted to, they don't have the bandwidth at the moment to provide all the eggs for Jersey, so we do rely on eggs being brought in. But I think you can tell the difference between a Jersey egg and one that's from the and that's not some kind of chauvinist statement. I think the quality, when it's so immediate and local, is palpable. And I won't mention him because he's in the audience tonight, but I was really excited that we've got one of our parishioners who's running, using some of the greenhouses to grow strawberries, and they looked really deliciously red. He didn't give me any samples, but I may need to go back and see him to try them. So look, there are some small shoots of hope, I think, throughout the island. We are becoming less dependent on the monoculture of the Jersey Royal. I think we should be proud of the Jersey Royal potato, but I think the future is in it being more of a premium product. I would like to see those glass houses being put back into use so that they could actually be offered for community projects, because allotments don't just have to be actual ground. You can grow a lot more in a greenhouse for a lot longer seasons. You know, I know back in my grandfather's day, they were able to grow, have a small holding and make some money selling tomatoes and exporting them down at the Weybridge. I mean, those days have gone, but I think we can be more self-sufficient and more reliable. So yeah, anything we can do in that area, I would certainly support.
Thank you. Where was the next question? Wasn't there somebody here? No, I think there was somebody over there as well, wasn't it? I think that was the next person, and we'll come to you and then the lady behind.
I'm Ricia. I'm from St Brelade as well.
Could mic a bit closer, and can you speak a bit louder?
Yeah, sure. I'm Ricia, and I'm from St Brelade. I've got a pretty simple question. I know that there's an issue with businesses that are not accepting cash, and obviously that causes difficulties for some of the vulnerable groups. My question is, would you accept or would you support the acceptance of cash by business? And if not, why not?
Okay, so the question is, would you support businesses having to accept cash for their services or not? And explain your reasoning. So, John, you're first.
In principle, yes. But I certainly recognise the benefits of electronic methods. I mean, I asked, well, surely it should be possible to have both. I think I particularly feel there's a large community who find themselves excluded, digital exclusion. It can either be through disability or other, or illness and so on. And so I think those people are perhaps more adjusted, people who are in that situation, are more adjusted to using cash. And if they find themselves in a position where they can't undertake transactions and they can't do any, I think that's a serious situation. I think digital exclusion, full stop, is an issue, not just the issue of cash, but the cutting people off. I do wonder how now, the way the world is, where pretty well everything you do requires you to have an app on your phone to do anything. I don't personally pay on my phone. So I think we do need to do that. And I think maybe this is where we need to work with the banks. I think working with the banks and having banking centres, I can see the economic logic that with the transaction volumes being so low, they can no longer sustain their branches to deal with those cash items. But of course, traders still need to pay in cash because of course there is, that does happen. And people do need to draw. A lot of people draw cash. So I think, that proposition that went through the States was the right one. And I think we should be able to, as a society, cope with that. I find it a bit of a struggle to, now businesses do save, but is it always got to be, the sole source of a profit? Surely, in terms of managing a business, if it is that as a society we need to recognise cash payments, and surely they should be able to handle that, I think.
Thank you. Jonathan.
This is a really interesting question because, of course, it's a dynamic situation. The take-up of cash is declining and the increase of digital is going apace. And so we have to keep we can't just have an answer fixed for all time, I think. But Monty brought a proposition in the States about the use of cash. I voted to support that. And so I put my voting, where my mouth where my principles are there in a way. But I do think we should keep it under review. We have to accept that this is an increasingly digital society. And part of the answer has to be to encourage people who aren't able to use digital technology or aren't comfortable using it to be more comfortable using it. I don't think it is realistic going forward for every single business to be told that they have to accept cash. Some businesses, it's not going to work for them. As a society, we need to maintain cash. Not just, by the way, because it's easier to use, but because it's hard for some people to get bank accounts, and also for privacy reasons. People do not always want every transaction to be logged. But as I say, there is a balance to be struck there, and part of it is around giving businesses the opportunity to do things which don't necessarily involve cash, so long as a society we still offer all the options are still available for people. So they may not be able to buy something, at every store with cash, but they would be able to buy the thing somewhere with cash.
Thank you. Monty.
Thanks, John. I think it's time to get my wallet out, isn't it? Don't worry, no money will change hands this evening. But look, we do have our own cash in Jersey. We've got these beautiful £1 notes. I think this is probably the only place in the British Isles now that we have them, and it's got the former Queen on the back, our Duke, and it's got the beautiful artwork from the island. So there's a practical reason why I think we need to protect and promote cash, is because we've got our unique Jersey cash. It's part of our identity, and tourists love it. So yes, we do live in a digital world. It's not about like turning back the clock and being nostalgic, but I think those are some of the things that make Jersey special. And I think there's a bigger concern here, is that we're being nudged in a certain direction. So cash is declining, but it's with the great help of the banks, because they're making it more and more difficult for businesses to pay in their cash, to take out cash. There's money to charge for handling it. But there is also, the genesis is, thank you for the question, Mauricia. So I did do, not just bring the proposition, but we did a scrutiny review into this. And the more we looked into it, is that it wasn't simply about how people pay for things, is that it's actually about those social interactions. It's about the inclusion in the community for people who might be blind, for example. There's also, surprisingly, a VORG issue here, because, I read through the notes of the UK commission that they did into it, and women were saying that, we like to pay cash for things because it's the only way that my abusive partner can't track me. If he looks at my bank details, he knows where I am, and if the only places I can go to are the places that accept cash, he probably knows where I am as well. So when a business doesn't accept cash, it's effectively saying to that person, you're not welcome here. And before we know it, there's going to be certain cafes in town where certain people are not allowed to go, and we get a kind of financial apartheid that exists. So it is much more serious than it appears on the surface. And so I think the balance of harms is actually to say, yes, it might be a small imposition on most businesses to have to accept cash, but actually try and be inclusive. It is part of what we would like to be as a society. It doesn't mean that all businesses are going to do it. If you're an online business, if you have vending machines, of course, let's be sensible about this.
Thank you. Gabriel.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how many politicians in the States actually supported this, keeping cash, and it doesn't really surprise me given most of the brown envelopes will be filled with that cash. And I know I say that in somewhat of a joke, but I actually think it is somewhat serious as well. I do think we need to look at what is happening with cash, and as we see a move towards digital, we do see money being declared in a different way. I do feel for the businesses that will be affected by the cash, whether that be more difficult to have transactions because they have to deal with so much more. I used to work at Domino's down the road. It would have been so much more difficult to have somebody there taking cash. And so I don't think enough work was done with businesses looking into this. And I do feel like this was proposed at a time where it was more looked at as a vote grabber than something that was looked into for a long time. But I do also, on the other side of that, feel for people that use cash. I mean, my grandmother, she's no good with technology. She's not very good with cards, and she does use cash a lot. So I think it's about striking a balance, as the others have said, between where can businesses actually realistically take on this legislation, and where can we work with them to not have to use that. And I think that needs to be looked into more, especially going forward as the proposition has been taken. But I hope that gives some sort of insight into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Up there. We'll come to you next.
Hello, I'm Julian from some Brelades. Candidates, what achievable project would you like to take on to make some Brelades better?
Making St Brelades better. We could have a hat for that. Here you go, Jonathan.
Well, I've spent a lot of time, invested quite a bit of effort in Les Quennevais. because I see it as such an opportunity for the parish. And I see it as an opportunity because there's a big area there. When I first became Minister for the Environment, one of the things I asked was, could I see a map of all the government-owned land? What land was the Environment Department managing? And there was this huge area around Les Quennevais, all these fields. Not strictly owned, they're on a 199-year lease, but it counts to the same thing, really. So to me, I wanted to know why we weren't making more of that. And we've had a problem with the Bowls Club being vacated. It created an opportunity. And now, finally, I did push quite hard on this. We have a preferred bidder to take over that tenancy. And I see it as a terrific opportunity to develop an area for the community. So it'll be an area we get a cafe there. It'll be an area where we've got the pump track already. That needs to be improved. We can spread out a little bit into those fields and maybe have some tables there, some children's play area, not an elephant park, but sort of natural play. We've got a place where parents and grandparents can sit and have tea or coffee. We've got a wider park that we could make more use of. And my idea for that is that we need community involvement to decide what to do. We've already had a vision. There's someone in the audience here who produced a very beautiful document suggesting some ideas for that. It's a stimulus for thought. What we need now is to get the community involved in working out what the best things are that we can do there. What are the things that people want to see there? How could we improve that area? I think there's a huge opportunity there for a real community hub. And that, I think, is the one thing I would choose.
Thank you. Monty.
Thank you, Julian. It's a great question. Can I give you the fun and slightly tenuous answer first? But it is all relevant. So what I would like to do more generally for Jersey, which would have a byproduct effect of a benefit for St. Brelade, is just improve the boat service at the moment. So Jersey has great tourist offerings, and St. Brelade is really the jewel in the crown, especially the bay. So we want to make sure that tourists can get here in the first place to enjoy what Jersey's got to offer, especially European tourists who are currently all going to Guernsey, apparently. So we can do more around that. I'm willing to put my expertise to good work in that area. But look, I think that actually I'm really keen on sports tourism. I was up at the Les Quennevais track the other day, on Saturday, in fact, for the 500th park run. I haven't done all 500, by the way, but I have managed 21 official park runs, so that's not too bad. Watch this space. And tourists come over to do things like parkrun. They come over for cycling events. They come over for the triathlon. And so what I think we can do is actually make St. Brelade one of those hubs for activities. And there's going to be some great fun events, I think, coming up in the next couple of weeks at the Quennevais fields as well, where you can try sports. So you know, I think we can be proud of what we already do in St. Brelade. One little idea: I'd love it if Jersey Tourism, Visit Jersey, came down to parkrun every week with a bag of goodies, certainly maybe in the shoulder months, and said, look, welcome to Jersey, well done for doing parkrun, here's a bag for you, this is what you can enjoy in Jersey, and you can get some discounts in the parish. So yeah, I'm all for that and other ideas.
Thank you. Gabriel.
Thank you for that question, Julian. I think that's a really good one. Where do we start? Well, I think we need to look at in St. Brelade, we need to look at the community. And what can we do across the community to bring more for people? That's not just young people. I think that, like I said, is across the age groups. For young people, I think we need to see investment into the elephant park. I think we do need to see more play equipment put in there, not these extortionate costs at the toilet cost. I think we could do that realistically by looking around and working with some of the contractors. Then we need to look more at community cafes. I mean, recently we have lost the Bean Cafe. And the Bean Cafe was a place where a lot of people used to go just to have a chat, to be feel part of Jersey, feel part of St. Brelade, feel part of our community. And I think that's where we need to encourage small businesses. We need to support local businesses, not just in St. Brelade, but across the island. But obviously, being in St. Brelade, we have St. Albans, we have the precinct, we have those areas. Where can we start to encourage small businesses so that we can get that community effect, so that we can get people in the room across the age groups? And I think that's really good for St. Brelade. If we look slightly more island-wide, something that I think is achievable is I think we can bring an affordable supermarket to this island, and it will support the people in St. Brelade as well. we could realistically see a quarter taken off a household's food budget. That will take the pinch off cost of living at such a difficult time, and every single family is feeling it at the moment. So I really think we could look at doing that. We could look at planning. We can look at regulation around it. And we do have sites. We almost had Super U here, but planning made it so difficult that it wasn't possible. It's happened in the Orkney Islands with 22,000 people. They have a Lidl, and yet we don't. So why? We need to look at that. We can bring one here. We just need to work on it as a government. Thanks.
Thank you. John.
I look forward to hearing about what sites meet the criteria in the parish for a large supermarket. Obviously, we are talking about a pretty substantial arrangement which would need all of the facilities of access and parking and so on to go with it. So I look forward to hearing that. But on the question of the local project, I'm a bit torn. I think that there is a project which I suppose is more for the island, which is about using our heritage more and explaining it to people, because we are a prime tourist part of the island, and I just don't think we do enough of that. But in terms of local, what for our community, I've been struck by going round the doors in the last few weeks. I keep following the postman, and we keep having a talk with the postie about the number of people of advanced years who are living on their own, really quite lonely. And really, when one starts to talk to them, one asks, well, have they got relatives? Is there family to give them the support, or what? Or is there any, what clubs are they can go to, on activities? I'm just left with those questions, because I know other parishes have successfully introduced such schemes. I think St Clement is one. And I just wonder, and I speak from ignorance here, that's purely as a result of my impression of going round the doors and seeing people that I think, I think we could do more. But, it's not a criticism of the people that are doing. It's a question of how we can expand it, how we can put some more money in, some more resources, and give it priority. So I think that would be a thing that I think I would settle on.
Thank you. Next question, I think we've probably only got time for one. I think this gentleman, yeah, 1 minute answers this time, chaps. This one next.
Good evening, my name's Piers, I live in St Brelade. Over the last 30 years, there have been a number of species that have gone locally extinct as breeding species, and others are becoming ecologically extinct. It is widely acknowledged that Britain is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world, and Jersey has lost even more due to the inherent nature of islands' ecology. Given the candidates have commented about the environment mainly as a visual amenity, such as green space, and the future need for building more housing, how can the government move to restore the continuing decline in biodiversity of the island in line with international conventions? And would the candidates support including a new designated areas for nature restoration as part of the next island plan in the same way that land is designated for new housing?
So how would you encourage biodiversity, and how would you put that into the island plan? First is Monty. Try to do it in a minute.
Yeah, Piers, thanks. That's a great question. Look, I think it is absolutely important. I remember a debate in the States which was quite wide-ranging, and I can't remember what it was about, but I think Deputy Morell, I think we can say his name without anything bad happening, said something really interesting that, we look at a field and presume that, that field's a waste of space, why are we not doing anything with it? But actually sometimes we do need those areas of what appear like scrubland, but these pollinator patches that appear, we see them in Clos de Sable, they're such a great idea, but they're not unkempt, they're well actually looked after. And the knock-on biological effect that has in the ecosystem is absolutely brilliant. So, we do need to be mindful that we're not the only inhabitants of the island, that there is a hard-nosed way to look at this, is that also the nature in the island is really good for tourism. But it's also great for us when we can go out for walks in the countrysides, for runs, for cycling, and you just hear the birds. So we do live in a very built-up area here, and the nature is so important because we're all part of that nature. So without getting too philosophical, thank you for the question, and more power to your elbow, Piers.
Gabriel.
Thanks, Piers. I really like that question because I think it comes back to something that's really important here. And I think it's a good question as well because we do have two former environment ministers here. We do have many problems at the moment with wildlife going. And in an island where we have so much wildlife, we have unique wildlife like the squirrels, that's a problem. Our paths continue to widen. If we look at paths around the island, they're continuing to widen, especially with cliff paths, with things like the cycle track. When they widen, we know a lot of species live on those boundaries, and we are starting to harm the species. Now, I don't know enough about the nature restoration in the island plan, and I will look more into that. I can't give a thought on it or an opinion on it, but I do care about encouraging and protecting the species that we have here and making sure we don't just end up, especially in Brelade, like a second town.
Thank you. John.
Thank you. I think it's a great question. I'm pretty certain that the island plan doesn't really cut it in terms of looking after our biodiversity, although there's things in there. I think, for my mind, I think I need more focus on practicalities. For example, our hedgerows, making sure that these are maintained, that somebody looked after and allowed to, be havens for wildlife, where at the moment, I think this is a problem area that we're not doing that. So we've got outfits in the island where, for example, the National Trust for Jersey, they've got a lands manager, they really are excellent at it. And in the past, the planning, the environment team used to have a team of people doing this type of work, but I think now this is, very much reduced now in probably, I'm not quite sure it's economies or what. So yes, I think we can have a fresh look at it to see if there's some policy base that we can introduce into the island plan, nature restoration areas. I'm not entirely convinced whether that kind of approach will work, but certainly practical measures and working with partners like National Trust, I think.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Yes, I think, John, you've slightly done yourself down. The island plan does have proposals in it for biodiversity net gain. And that is the simple solution that we can apply. You asked for what practical things we would do. The next island plan needs to include the development of the concept, which was only mentioned as something to do in the future. Needs to develop the concept of biodiversity net gain, which means that whenever we do a development, that it has to add more nature than it takes away. And they can either do that on the site where the development is happening, or they can pay to develop, to contribute to biodiversity somewhere else. And I think that would be a tremendous start to that. And there's an urban greening factor that can play into that as well. So I would very much support that, and I think that we have to make that progress through the planning system.
Okay, thank you. I think we've run out of time, I'm afraid. I know there's a couple of questions up there, but I'm sure the candidates will kind of be hanging around for a bit, so come up and have a chat to them when we've finished, because before we go, they'd like to have a quick wrap-up of some of their policies. First, Gabriel.
Thank you guys for bearing with me. I know this is my first time doing this sort of thing, but it's really good to have to see so many people out here, like I said at the beginning, because it does show that people care. I think it goes, with me, I think it goes back to the things that matter most and the things that I continue to hear. What do we need to do as the next State Assembly? We need to focus on the cost of living, because it is really pushing people. We need to focus on the young people leaving, because it is affecting all of us. It's keeping tax on pensions. It's keeping the earners being pushed. So we do need to focus on these things. Once we have that base, then we can start developing it. But let's get to a point where the people here are not suffering first. And on the 7th of June, you guys do have 13 votes. I would love if you lent me one of them, just to put a young voice in the Assembly and try and create some sort of change and make this island better. Thank you very much, guys.
John.
Well, first of all, echo the thoughts of thank you. It's really quite, impressive that everybody's turned out in such large numbers and to produce such good questions. So thank you very much indeed. But I'm sure everybody in this room will vote, because you wouldn't be here. But so please do, and please encourage all your family, friends, and others in the parish. Please, it's important that you use that. But I think on the question of, if you like, long-term v short-term, I think we need both. We need members who can both address longer-term strategic, visionary issues, as well as ensuring we get short-term delivery. It's not a question of all or one. And I think that takes me to the choices that you've got, which is a difficult choice in this parish. You've got a range between youth and experience and existing members. Now, I think we need both. What we need is we need to have more emphasis in youth, but we've also, there's a big role for experience in there. And so I think hopefully you'll get from my pitch, I offer that. But obviously the future is in your hands, Jersey's future. I encourage you to vote. So thank you all very much indeed for listening to me.
Jonathan.
It's been a terrific meeting, and I do want to say thank you for all those questions as well. But I think the one thing I want to add is that travelling around the parish, knocking on doors and talking to people, I want to thank everybody who has taken the time to talk to me. Contrary to what you might think, that's a different bell.
Must be lunchtime.
Contrary to what you might think and hear, actually the conversations have been uniformly friendly, even with people who disagree with me. People have shared tremendous stories. They've confided things in me, and it has been a privilege to hear those things. I'll stick around a bit if anybody wants to talk to me at the end. The final thing I'd say is, I know you won't agree with everything I say. You know, that's just life. But what I can promise is that I live my values, and I will always explain myself to you, and I am very happy to be challenged. Thank you.
Monty.
That's okay. Yeah, thank you everyone again for coming, and I'll thank Kathy now just so I don't forget, and hopefully that won't eat into my minute too much. But thank you for chairing so capably. Yeah, look, I just want to emphasise the fact that democracy is important. If we look around the world, not all countries have it in the form that we have. We don't have a perfect system, but we do have what we've got, and I think we should protect it. We should get out there and vote. The vote is been hard fought for, especially for women who it took longer to get the vote for. I also want to just tackle this idea of a hierarchy that's come around again in this election, which I don't think is helpful at all. All 49 members that will be elected in this island need to be capable, as I've said, of doing all those jobs. And I reject this idea that there's a hierarchy where the senators are somehow better than the deputies or the constables, because actually all of us need to be capable of doing the casework, and if none of us are too good to actually be knocking on doors, because that's where we learn so much, and it's been a privilege to reconnect with constituents. I've made my pitch. Look, you know, you do have 13 votes. I would ask you to give 3 of those to Reform Jersey members. Give us a chance to show you what we can do by working collectively, both 2 of us here and for Sam Mezek for Senator. Thank you.
So thank you for all your questions, and thank you to the candidates for their answers. Thanks also to the tech team, to Sarah for handing around the mic, and for everyone who's helped to organise tonight's event. Another tech team person up there. Thank you, somebody from the school. If you'd like to get in touch with any election candidates, you can find their contact details on vote.je and in the manifesto booklets which have been delivered to you all. If you applied for a postal vote, your ballot papers need to be at the judicial graph by 12 noon this Sunday. It's coming upon us quickly. On election day, polling stations are open from 8 till 8, and please remember to take photo ID. Did you want to say something, John?
I want to say thank you, Kathy, because you did a fantastic job keeping us all in order. And it's been a great evening and a real credit to Jersey. Well done.
Okay, thanks very much for coming, and good night.